think he's the best person to be there with you if you're scared or upset about it. On screen, they smiled. They fixed broken family treasures. It made families cry every time they fixed something. The repair shop loved Suzie and Steve Fletcher, but they kept a secret from many years ago. People watched them and praised their skill, but few thought about the silent battles they fought outside the barn doors. Fans are shocked that Suzie and Steve Fletcher's repair shop finally opens. We are about to tell their untold story, a trip through the pain of childhood, a lifetime of quiet, and a final choice to let everything out in the open. The quiet before the show. Millions of people around the world found comfort in the slow beat of the repair shop for more than 10 years. The soft scrape of sandpaper against worn-out wood, the reassuring tick of a newly serviced clock, and the sad tears of families who had lost heirlooms came together to make a place of warmth and custom. Suzie and Steve Fletcher, siblings, were at the center of this comfortable atmosphere. Their hands seemed to have a special kind of magic on them. With her soft touch and calm demeanor, Suzie represented the timeless traits of care and patience. Steve, who was careful and quiet, kept her energy in check with a steady calm. All of them worked together to keep the workshop going. They were like anchors in a sea of memories and repairs. The people saw them as more than just skilled craftsmen. They were family, and they stood for power and loyalty that would last forever, and the deep roots of family history. The way they looked at each other, laughed together, and played off of each other's strengths made it a dance of family that was almost perfect in its unity. But there was a story tucked away behind those warm smiles and soft hands. A story full of pain, strength, and secrets that were kept from the cameras, a fact that isn't shown by the old walls of the workshop or by the shine of polished silver. The fans could feel something going on below the surface. Suzie's eyes lit up with sadness when a piece made her think of times she had lost. There was a short pause in Steve's steady hands when the subject got too personal. These little details hinted at a secret part of the story. But no one knew how far the shadows went. There are shadows under the workshop. There was more to Suzie Fletcher's life than the pretty face she had on TV. Behind her calm smile was a history marked by quiet strength. Suzie learned what it means to work hard, be responsible, and make quiet sacrifices. While growing up on one of Colorado's vast ranch lands, she was shaped by the vast, wild, and sometimes cruel environment. Her marriage used to be a sign of happiness, but it turned out to be hard. The man she loved turned into a source of pain for her, and she rarely talked about him, not even to the people closest to her. A relationship tainted by fear, bruises hidden beneath the surface of daily life, and times when fear took the place of love. Suzie's determination never wavered, no matter how much she had to carry. Using her strength, she turned her pain into purpose in every piece she fixed up and story she helped keep alive. But below the surface, scars remained. The audience couldn't see them, but they were well known. Steve Fletcher, her brother and co-star, kept their past safe in a quiet way. He was crazy about the complicated gears and soft springs in old clocks and watches. The accuracy he sought in life showed in the way he worked, but behind the steady ticking of clocks was a man who was covering up his own mental wounds. Steve was acting cool, but he wasn't. He was responsible for keeping his sister safe, calming down the family, and making sure the workshop stayed a safe place for both of them. His calm hands did more than just fix things. They fixed broken hearts, including his own. Together, Suzie and Steve showed the world that they were one. Because they were both trying to stay alive, they became friends, which was sometimes funny and sometimes serious. Fans thought their exchanges and interviews gave them a full picture, but they had only seen the very beginning. There was a story below that would soon come to light. It would contradict the reassuring story and show how strong the Fletcher brothers really are. The house that tried to get better. Their home in Oxfordshire as kids was full of different things. It looked like a broken-down old house with creaky wooden floors and faded wallpaper that told stories of people who lived there in the past. It had 4 rooms that were full of noise, chaos, and laughter from 4 kids. They were always making something or fixing something, and they were chasing each other through narrow halls. It was a place where family meals, homemade cakes for birthdays, and the smell of freshly brewed tea from the kitchen filled the air. From the outside, it looked like a picture of a loving, close-knit family. But there was pain and weakness that couldn't be spoken above the noise and laughs. Their mother dealt with serious postpartum depression in silence, a condition that wasn't well known at the time and was often ignored or kept secret. There was a persistent darkness over the house that was hidden by the happy noises of youth. Their mom's life was often filled with deep sadness and worry, and her energy was draining away like the tide going out to sea. Their father, who was supposed to keep the family together, couldn't handle the stress. The man he was shaped by his own worries and anger, someone who tried to be the rock but was actually breaking down inside. He also had a nervous breakdown because of all the stress. This is the kind of breakdown that breaks down facades and shows raw weakness. There were times when the kids were quietly taken to stay with cousins, where they could be safe from the storm and keep their innocence. The days were spent figuring out how to live with a family where the love sometimes felt like a carefully put-on mask, a thin, fragile layer that hides the inner cracks below. Steve Fletcher later talked about those early years in a way that was both honest and kind. He remembered, his words heavy with memory, how terrible it was for her mom to have postpartum depression. Not only was she sad, but she also felt very alone. That made Dad lose it. He lost his mind because he couldn't handle things. We were all going through a rough time. Suzie added, "Looking back, I feel so sorry for Mom," in a voice filled with sympathy. At the time, no one really knew how terrible it was. There was nothing nice about the way they treated them. Today, that would be seen as cruel. Things were against her and they couldn't help her. Even though things were hard, the brothers' memories of their parents are balanced, with loving and honest memories. "We had issues just like every other family does," Steve said in a low voice. "We also had each other. We made it through those times. It didn't make us who we are or hold us back like you might think. It wasn't just luck that they were strong. That was the quiet power of a family that was determined to heal in its own unique way." The absent years. When Suzie was 30, she made a choice that would alter the course of her life. Her old streets and open fields in Oxfordshire were left behind as she crossed the Atlantic to start over in Colorado, USA. From the outside, it looked like a big risk, an exciting journey, and a chance to start over, away from the shadows of a hard past. But there was an element of flight hidden beneath the promise of fresh starts. Moving was about more than just getting away from old ghosts. It was also about taking advantage of new chances. Suzie could get some fresh air in Colorado's vast scenery and clear skies, a break from the secret problems she had as a child. At least that's what it seemed like at first. She found love in America. Rob, the man she married, moved into the story, but didn't say anything. Many of her fans who watched her on the repair shop thought he was still a mystery. His absence on TV said a lot. The marriage was never talked about in public. There was a lot of pain and endurance in what happened behind closed doors. A secret fight that made Suzie the strong, caring woman that people would come to admire. She went through a lot of pain in that relationship, but what really made her stand out was her quiet strength and failure to let her pain define her. Even though she didn't talk about those years much, they still lived on and shaped her worldview, her ability to understand others, and her desire to help others heal through the craft and relationships she made on the show. Her journey from those hard, hidden years to fame and artistic success is a testament to the strength of the human spirit. It shows that even in the darkest times, hope and change are still possible. What about her brother in the UK? The quiet was planned. Steve Fletcher's life took place mostly in the quiet county of Oxfordshire, away from the constant attention of the public. The horologist at the repair shop had a happy face that everyone saw, but few knew the heavy load he was carrying inside. Steve was very careful, and not just with clocks and watches. He was also very careful about the lines he drew around his personal life. Steve raised 5 kids in a close-knit family and worked hard to build a reputation as a master craftsman who could fix even the most broken family treasures. Even with all of this success, the family stayed together because of an unspoken understanding, something that was agreed upon in secret. Every laugh caught on camera was a carefully built wall that kept the family from facing the harsh truth that could have broken up their world. Suzie Fletcher, who is known for both her leather work and horse restoration, agreed to this without saying it out loud. She might have known more than anyone else how much it cost to be seen. "They made us hide this," she said quietly in a rare interview. Back then, families didn't share. It was risky to talk about these things. There was a reason for that silence. I had to stay alive. In a time when talking about mental health was frowned upon and being open and vulnerable was often seen as a sign of weakness, the Fletchers built their fortress not with bricks and mortar, but with silence and care. Suzie's words matched the truth that many families of that time didn't want to say. Tragedy and grief were hidden away, kept out of the reach of nosy people, to protect everyone in the family. Steve's decision not to leave Oxfordshire where he lived to get away from the memories of past struggles by moving or changing his plans was a quiet example of his strength. He was strong because he didn't run away from pain but instead learned how to handle it without breaking. The cameras could never catch the hours of quiet fight that went on behind the workshop doors. There were times when the hands that fixed old clocks shook with memories that should not have been shared. People's smiles didn't show how sad they were that night or how hard it was to protect a family tradition that had been scarred by loss. So during the quiet time between clock strikes, Steve and Suzie's silence said a lot. It was a language that was learned and spoken through knowing looks and nods. It was a tie that could not be broken, made in the depths of pain and love. The surface has cracks, but time, like even the most perfectly tuned machines, shows flaws. Steve and Suzie worked hard to keep up a calm and happy front, but there were small cracks in their facade that could only be seen by people who were really paying attention. Suzie's noticeable absences from a number of repair shop shows were noticed by die-hard fans. There were more and more whispers of worry, but no one said what they were worried about. Her once lively and bright presence seemed less strong, like ghosts from the past were slowly moving into the present. Steve also became more quiet. Interviews took on a more reflective tone. The man who seemed unbreakable at first showed brief hints of a deeper story. In podcasts and behind-the-scenes shows, emotions that had been buried for a long time came to the surface. Pieces of stories were told with carefully chosen words that left more questions than answers. Fans were drawn to Fletcher's work because it was real and friendly, but they couldn't figure out what was behind those smiles. The family's silence became less of a wall and more of a request for understanding, patience, and respect for the fights that were being fought behind closed doors. What had they been through to get this close? What terrible events and hardships had brought them together so closely? What facts did they know they weren't telling, hidden behind a curtain of grace and strength? As the cracks in their public image got bigger, people were interested and also felt sorry for them. No longer was the Fletcher family story just one of fixing things up and making things. It was a story about people who had to fight to stay alive, keep going, and be brave enough to protect each other in the worst times. As the public's attention grew, so did the excitement. What was lost or hidden would not be the only thing that would be shown when the time came. It would be about how strong you can be when you let yourself be weak, and how brave you have to be to finally say what you never dared to whisper. The choice to talk. There was no surprise here. Over the course of decades, there was a lot of internal debate that finally came to a head. Steve and Suzie carried their shared past with a quiet pride for many years, a quiet strength that rarely showed the storm below the surface. People looked up to them and admired them their whole lives, especially at the repair shop. Behind the scenes, though, a thin wall of silence stood firm, not out of shame, but because it had to. The world saw their smiles, how comfortable they were with cameras, and how much they loved restoring things. But they knew there was more to the story than that. Pain isn't always easy to see. It can hide behind calm eyes and soft words sometimes. Then there was the moment when the scales finally fell. It wasn't a big news story or a tabloid reveal. The talk was on a podcast and was personal, honest, and deeply human. A few carefully chosen words were sent into the ether. At first they seemed hesitant, like they were trying the water. The response happened right away, but it was clear what was meant. They were no longer hidden. Steve was the first to speak. His voice was steady, but it had the weight of living with the past for years. When you grow up with that kind of background, you just take it with you, he said, and his tone was more thoughtful than angry. But you have to let some of it go at some point. You can't keep carrying everything inside for a long time. It hurts you. It wasn't an attempt to get sympathy or respect. It was freeing and a wake-up call. The siblings had decided to be seen over being hidden. Something big was going on behind their quiet. A quiet but unstoppable drive toward healing, truth, and taking back who you are. The hidden chapter. Even with that big step forward, there was still a lot of darkness. They only scratched the surface of a much darker story that had been hidden for a long time under the smiles and the craftsman's patience. In a long, rare interview, Suzie and Steve revealed parts of their past that they had kept hidden for a long time out of fear and strong loyalty. Fear and long loyalty. This wasn't just a sad or hard story. This was life in its most raw, unfiltered form. The world had only caught glimpses of Suzie's marriage, but it was a long and difficult road. Rob was her husband, and he had fought pancreatic cancer with all his might. But the illness did more than just make them sick. It showed an incredibly scary change in character. What started out as small changes turned into clear signs of violence and control. She said that the worst memory she had was being pulled off the ground by her throat while her feet dangled and her body quickly lost its breath. Suzie said in a voice barely above a whisper, "I really thought I was going to die. He was squeezing me so hard that I thought my throat would close off completely. I have no idea what stopped him or why he let go. But when he did, I gasped and was scared." When she said it, there was a heavy pause that spoke louder than words. Not just for the crowd, but also for Suzie, it broke her illusions. "I was deeply shocked," she thought, her eyes wide. "I always thought that wouldn't happen to me. I thought that violence and fear were only for other people and other stories. That was my lie, until I felt his hands on my throat and saw the truth. He would never hurt me. That's what I told myself." Tragically, Rob went from